The storm rolled in slowly at first, like a warning whispered through the leaves. The glass panes of the historical greenhouse trembled as wind pressed against them, and the distant sky flickered with the first pale hints of lightning. Lila stood on the wooden bench beneath the hanging ferns, her sleeves rolled to her elbows, carefully misting the orchids that bloomed only under precise humidity and light. She moved with a practiced tenderness, one hand lifting the fragile stem, the other adjusting the mist sprayer, while rain began to patter more insistently overhead. Working alone after hours had become her sanctuary. The gardens were quiet then. No donors asking questions she didn't care to answer. No board members debating maximizing land value. Just her, the plants, and the soft hum of the greenhouse temperature regulators. Tonight, though, even the plants seemed tense. Leaves rustled without touch. The air felt charged. A storm was coming, and not just the one outside. The heavy doors of the greenhouse swung open, letting in a gust of cold air and the unmistakable scent of cologne, subtle, expensive, deliberate. Lila looked up. Elias Mercer stepped inside. Tall, sharp, tailored in charcoal wool that somehow didn't dampen in the rain. His presence filled the space like a shift in gravity. She didn't need an introduction. Everyone knew who he was, the billionaire architect with a smile that never reached his eyes, the man who built cities that reflected power more than human life, and now, the man trying to buy the land she devoted her life to protecting. He scanned the greenhouse like it was a line item on a spreadsheet. "You're still here," he said, voice low and smooth. Lila set down the sprayer. "Some of us don't clock out when the work is personal." His gaze flicked to her hands, dirt beneath her nails, a tiny cut healing along her knuckle, proof of someone who worked with what she loved instead of managing it from above. "I'm here for the final inspection before tomorrow's vote," Elias replied. No apology for the intrusion, no acknowledgement of the hour. "There's nothing to inspect," she said. "This place is history. Living history. The board knows that." He took a slow step closer. "History doesn't pay maintenance bills. Progress does." The words hit her like a slap she refused to show. "Building luxury apartments isn't progress," she shot back. "It's replacement, erasure." Lightning cracked outside, followed by a bone-deep rumble of thunder. The storm had finally broken. Rain striking the greenhouse in sheets. The sound was deafening. Elias glanced toward the entrance. "Roads will be flooding in minutes. We should leave." "You might," Lila said. "I'm not abandoning the greenhouse during a storm." He checked his phone. Service flickered out. The rain intensified. Wind howled. The storm swallowed the city. He exhaled slowly, the first sign of uncertainty she'd ever seen from him. "It seems we're stuck here," he admitted. Lila crossed her arms, chin lifting. "Then don't touch anything." A silence settled, charged, taut, strangely intimate. The storm outside sealed them in, the air thick with humidity and something unspoken. Annoyance softened, just a fraction into curiosity. Her eyes lingered on the way he looked at the orchids, not dismissive but analytical, almost reverent. His gaze lingered on her, not as an obstacle, but as something he couldn't yet categorize. Thunder rolled again, shaking the glass overhead, and neither of them stepped back. The storm had settled into a steady roar outside, rain striking the glass walls like 1,000 desperate hands. The air inside the greenhouse grew warm and heavy, humid with the breath of growing things, and the tension between them. Lila tried to focus on her work, but every movement felt slower, every heartbeat louder, because he was still there. Elias Mercer, a man carved from control and calculation, now trapped in a place ruled by nature, a place he could not dominate with logic or contract. She removed his jacket and draped it neatly over a bench. His white shirt, Beneath was rolled at the sleeves, revealing strong forearms and a small scar near his wrist. A detail that did not match the polished image he was known for. Leela forced her attention away. She walked deeper into the rows of plants, checking leaves, touching stems, trying to look busy, trying to ignore the awareness crawling across her skin. Elias followed, but not too closely. Just enough that she could feel him. The lights flickered. The storm outside. Growing fiercer, wind howling like something ancient and angry. Lila paused near the far end of the greenhouse where the rarest flowers were kept. Flowers that did not bloom under casual care. Flowers that needed patience, devotion, understanding. She spoke without looking at him. This garden does not need redevelopment. It needs protection. It needs someone who understands what lives here. Elias studied her. Not the plants this time, her. What do you gain from protecting this place? He asked. No judgment, only curiosity. Lila turned to him. Her eyes, steady and unafraid. You cannot measure value only in profit. Some things are alive. Some things are history. Some things teach us how to stay human. The lights flickered again, then died. Completely sudden. Darkness swallowed everything. Elias stepped, forward on instinct, his hand brushing her arm as he reached to steady her. The touch sent a shock through both of them. Not from fear, from something far more dangerous. Lila could hear his breathing slow, controlled but not entirely calm now. Outside, thunder rolled like the earth itself was breaking open. In the darkness between heartbeats, she felt it. The shift annoyance was gone now. There was only awareness. Silent, electric, undeniable. A beam of lightning illuminated the greenhouse in a flash. For one suspended moment, she saw his face clearly. No mask, no distance. Just a man standing far too close. And he saw her. The moment passed. Darkness returned. But the crack in the world had already opened. Neither of them moved away. The storm had trapped them, but something else now held them there. Not rain, not circumstance. Something far more powerful and far harder to escape. The darkness inside the greenhouse was thick. The storm outside beating against the glass, like a living thing. Each thunderclap, rolling through their chests, each flash of lightning revealing the outline of their bodies before hiding them again. Lila's breath was steady, but her heart was not. She could feel it, the way the air shifted around him, the way his presence filled. The space Elias was silent but not still. He moved with slow, careful steps as though the moment itself might shatter if handled wrong. There should be emergency lights, she said softly, her voice sounding smaller than she meant it to. There should be, he answered. But his attention was not on the power outage. It was on here. A sudden crash echoed from the far end of the greenhouse, a shelf of potted plants tipping over in the wind pressure. The sound sharp and startling in the darkness. Without thinking, Elias reached for her, his hand closing around her wrist, steadying her, protecting. Without even realizing what he was doing, Lila froze. Heat shot through her. Not fear. Something else. Something far more dangerous. You can let go, she whispered. But she did not pull away. He did not either. Lightning flashed again, and in that pale white burst, they saw each other clearly. She saw the tension in his jaw, the conflict in his eyes. A man who had spent his entire life being untouched by anything real now, standing inches from something that could undo him completely. He saw the strength in her stance, the fire behind her calm. A woman who refused to bow, even when the world told her to. The light vanished. Darkness swallowed them once more. You think I want to destroy this place? Elias said, his voice low. Close now, too close. But I do not create things to destroy other things I build, because building is the only way I know to keep from disappearing. Lila felt that those words not spoken like a businessman, spoken like a man with old unhealed wounds. She stepped closer. Though she had no memory of choosing to, then why take this garden? She asked, not angry now, just searching gently, carefully in the dark, because the board believes it is profitable, because they expect me to, because I have never had a reason to say. No, she understood. Then power had not made him free. It had made him trapped, obedient to expectation, burdened by image, never choosing for himself. Different kind of storm brewed quietly. Between them, another flash of lightning lit the greenhouse, this time just long enough to reveal the moment everything changed. Their faces were inches apart. Their breaths, mixing her shirt, clung to her skin from earlier humidity, revealing more than she ever intended, but she did not step back. His eyes dropped just for one careless second, and something inside him broke open. The lights flickered back on all at once, bright and sudden, illuminating them fully. They both exhaled at the same time as, though surfacing from deep water, the moment exposed the tension undeniable. The line-cross Adelia's stepped back first only because he had to, not because he wanted to. We should check the doors, he said, voice unsteady in a way he tried to hide. Lila nodded, but her pulse was still racing. The storm had trapped them together, but something far more dangerous had been unleashed, and neither of them knew how to contain it. The wind outside howled louder now, as if the storm had grown impatient. Rain struck harder, the sound relentless like a heartbeat echoing across glass. Lila moved down the greenhouse walkway with careful steps, her body still aware of every inch of space between her and Elias. Even though he walked several paces behind her, she knelt to pick up the fallen potted plants. Crushed soil scattered like dark earth wounds across the floor. She gathered each piece slowly with the gentleness of someone who had spent her life trying to save what others overlooked. Elias knelt beside her, not giving orders, not observing but helping. Silently, deliberately, his hands brushed hers once, then again. Not enough to be intentional, not enough to be accidental. Looked at him. His sleeves wet to the elbows, his hair damp, his breath steady, but heavy. "Why are you helping?" Lila asked softly, her voice barely audible beneath the storm. "Because I do not know how to leave you alone." The words were not planned, not polished, not worthy of a press release. They were true, dangerously true. Lila inhaled slowly, steadying herself, then placed the last pot upright and stood. The lights flickered again, a reminder that the storm had no intention of letting go. Elias walked to the glass wall, watching the rain crash against it in powerful sheets. His reflection stared back at him. Unfamiliar. A man unsettled. A man undone. She joined him, their shoulders nearly touching, but neither moved away. "You have so much control in your world," she said, her voice soft but grounded. "Everything follows your design, but nature does not obey blueprints, and it never will." He turned his head just enough to see her, really see her. "And still, you expect me to respect it?" he said quietly. "No," she answered. "I expect you to feel it." A sudden blast of thunder shook the greenhouse, and without warning, the backup power failed again, plunging them into darkness once more. But this time neither of them reached for distance. Lila's breath hitched softly, the sound small, but he heard. Elias reached out his fingers, finding her hand in the dark, not gripping, just holding, as though asking permission with touch instead of words. She did not pull away. The greenhouse seemed to breathe with them, a world reduced. "To heartbeat and rain, tell me something true," Lila whispered, not demanding, inviting. Elias closed his eyes. Thunder rolled. The answer rose from somewhere he had buried for years. "I am tired of building things that do not mean anything to me." His voice was barely a voice now, as if the storm was speaking through him. Lila's fingers tightened around his. Then she spoke her words, steady as roots anchoring through soil. "Then stop building for others, and start building where something lives." A long silence followed, but it did not feel empty. Lightning flashed again for one suspended moment. They saw each other clearly, her eyes bright with conviction, his filled with something close to longing. And when darkness returned, neither moved away from the other. Outside, the storm raged on. Inside, another storm was quietly choosing where it would strike next. The storm did not calm, if anything. It gathered strength, as if the sky itself had decided to test the limits of everything inside. The greenhouse glass rattled. Wind roared and water poured in heavy sheets that drowned out the rest of the world. Leela and Elias stood close now, close enough to feel each breath, close enough that neither could pretend the space between them held anything but tension. Not anger, now not conflict. Something more dangerous. Something that pulled. Instead of pushed. A sudden vibration buzzed through Elias' pocket. He stepped away only far enough to answer his voice. Low, controlled habit taking over as he spoke into the phone. Whoever was on the other end spoke louder. Leela heard her name. Heard the words leaked, photo. Heard the tone of scandal forming like a crack in Glacelia's. Jaw tightened his voice. Dropped into that cold, sharp tone the world knew him by. Handle it, and he ended the call. Lila felt the shift immediately. The world outside the greenhouse was trying to claw its way in the life she lived. Quietly. Patiently rooted in soil, and light was being dragged into a spotlight. She never asked for. What was that? She asked, though she already knew the answer in her bones. Someone took a photo of us during the board tour earlier this week. He said, the presence of that word, us, hung heavy. Someone leaked it to the press. The story will be out by morning. Leela stared at him, her heart pounding now for a different reason. Of course, she whispered. Because a man like you does not speak to a woman like me, unless there is something to win or something to take. Elias flinched. Actually flinched like the word struck, something deep beneath all the marble and steel. No, he said. Not this time. Not you. But the world would not see it that way, and they both knew it. Leela stepped back, her hand rising to steady herself on the wooden bench. Her voice was steady, but her eyes held fire. My work, my reputation, everything I have built will be questioned. Now Elias took a step toward her, not forceful but urgent. I will fix it. You cannot fix this with money. She said the words soft but absolute, because the world does not see us as equals, and you know that thunder cracked so sharply that the glass trembled. The storm seemed to be listening. Elias looked at her, really looked as though he was finally seeing the truth of her world. A world where her competence would be doubted, her achievements diminished, her character questioned not because of what she had done, but because of who she was and who he was. The silence that followed was thick, heavy, unmistakable. Then a bolt of lightning hit somewhere close. The lights surged once, twice, then died again, this time for good. Darkness swallowed them. But the truth had already been exposed, and it would not go back into hiding. Lila spoke first, her voice steady as the storm outside. Do not promise to save me. Do not promise. To shield me if you want to stand beside me. You do it, knowing exactly what it cost. Celia's exhaled slow, unsteady. The kind of breath a man releases when he realizes the path ahead is one he cannot walk without changing. Then I will change, he said, and the words felt like lightning. Bright, sharp, and irreversible. The storm continued its furious song. But inside the greenhouse, another storm had just begun to find its shape. Morning did not come gently. It arrived like a blow with ringing phones, buzzing notifications, and the sound of rain still pounding the glass roof long after thunder had faded. Leela sat on the wooden bench where she had ended the night, hands wrapped around a cup of cooling tea. Eyes unfocused, every petal and leaf in. The greenhouse seemed to watch her as if they too were waiting for what would break next. Elias stood near the entrance, phone in hand, voice low, controlled but barely. The world was closing its jaws around them, and he was trying to hold it back with words alone. She did not need details. She knew how stories spread, how a rumor became a headline, how a headline became a truth. No one questioned. The garden girl and the billionaire, the affair that must have bought the delay and demolition, the whisper that she had traded dignity for influence. The storm outside was not the one she feared anymore. Elias ended the call and stepped toward her. For once, there was no distance in his expression, no mask. His voice was quiet. The board is calling an emergency. Vote. They want to move forward with demolition today before the story grows. Lila's breath left her in a slow, controlled release. So that is how they do it. Distraction, chaos, speed, destroy everything before anyone can understand what was lost. Watched her a different kind of storm in his gaze. I will not let them. Not now. Not after this, she shook her head. You are not the only one they listen to. The greenhouse door slammed open with a gust of wind. Water splashing across the floor, and Noah walked in, her brother's soaked, angry eyes burning with accusation. Lila stood slowly. Noah. Do not Noah me. His voice cracked. You disappear for one night and wake up in a scandal with the man trying to tear down our home. Elias moved. But Lila lifted a hand, stopping him without looking. Noah's gaze landed on Elias. Cold, sharp. You do not get to speak. You do not get to be here. You are the reason she is in the news. You are the reason everything we worked for is being taken from us. Lila felt something inside her twist, because some of what he said was true, but not all of it. I chose to stay, she said softly. I was not trapped, not forced, not manipulated. I stayed because something happened, and I am still trying to understand it. Noah stared, shocked, hurt, the kind of hurt that could turn into hatred if left alone. Elias finally spoke, his voice controlled, but stripped of all arrogance. I will face the board. I will call the vote. I will stand against them. But I need your trust. Both of you. Noah laughed. Once cold, sharp trust is earned, Elias Mercer, and you have built entire cities without learning how to earn anything. The silence that followed was heavy, sharp, unavoidable. Outside, thunder rolled again. Inside, 3 lives stood at the edge of a choice that would change everything, and for the first time since the storm began, no one knew which way it would break next. The drive to the board headquarters felt like moving through the aftermath of something. Broken streets were slick with rain, the sky still bruised from the storm. People rushing under umbrellas, unaware of the quiet war forming beneath the surface. Lila rode in silence, seated beside Noah in the back seat. Elias drove, hands steady on the wheel, jaw set with a focus that was not anger, but resolve. A man preparing to step into a room that wanted him compliant, predictable, obedient, and he was about to betray every expectation. Noah watched him, arms crossed, anger still heavy in his chest. But something else too, a question he had not spoken yet. Lila stared out the window, the city reflected as blurred shapes, as if she were already leaving one world for another. They arrived at the building, all glass and steel, a monument to order, control, power. And for the first time, Lila understood how empty it felt, how lifeless. Inside, the boardroom was already filled, men and women in tailored suits, eyes sharp, expressions polished with polite hostility. Elias stepped to the head of the table. Not because he was expected to, but because this time he chose to. Before we begin the vote, he said, voice calm. I want to speak. The room shifted, not welcoming but watching, waiting for the predictable company line, the justification, the performance. Instead, he spoke the truth. The gardens are not just land. They are history. Culture, ecosystem, memory, and value cannot be measured only in profit margins. A scoff rose from the end of the table. Someone whispered, manipulation. Someone else murmured, distraction, tactics. Noah's hands tightened into fists. Lila remained still, but her breath trembled silently. Elias did not stop. This project was meant to represent progress, but progress without purpose is destruction. And I will not lead destruction disguised as development. The board members exchanged looks. This was not the Elias Mercer they expected. The polished king of glass towers. The man who never hesitated, never questioned, never cared. Now he was speaking. Not like a leader, but like a man. A human one, dangerous in his honesty. A board member stood, her voice sharp. This change in direction is highly irregular. Your judgment is compromised. There is public scandal forming around your involvement with Miss Hart. She said Lila's name like it was a stain. A flaw. A problem to remove. Leela stepped forward. The room stilled. "I have nothing to take from any of you," she said. Her voice quiet but undeniably steady, but "I will not let you reduce me to a rumor. My work is real. My knowledge is real. And my place in this conversation is real." The silence that followed bent the room in two. Pride on one side, truth on the other, another. Board member leaned forward, eyes narrowed. "We have already arranged a partnership with Sebastian Blake to accelerate the redevelopment timeline. Construction begins tomorrow." Elise froze only for a heartbeat, but Lila saw it. Noah saw it. The board saw it. Sebastian Blake, the rival, the mentor turned enemy. The man who believed the world belonged to him because he had never been told nah. The betrayal was coordinated. Strategic, public, complete. The storm outside had merely been weather. This was the real disaster. Elias spoke, but his voice changed now. No longer calm, no longer controlled. "You went to Blake behind my back," no one answered. "They did not need." Talila felt something cold settle deep in her chest. This was not just a fight for land. This was a fight for identity, for power, for who would define history and who would be erased from it. Noah looked at Elias, anger still there, but now with something else under it, a recognition of the mountain they were truly up against. Lila stepped closer to Elias, not touching him, but standing with him visibly, undeniably, publicly. "We are not finished," she said. And for the first time, Elias did not look like a man standing alone in a war. The board dismissed them, believing victory was already theirs. But storms do not end when the sky clears. Some begin after the world thinks it has won. They stepped out of the boardroom into a world that felt colder. The hallway long and echoing their footsteps. The only sound, Lila walked beside Elias Noah, a few steps behind the silence, heavy not. Empty but waiting. They reached the elevator, but before the doors could close, the lobby filled with noise. Voices, flashes, reporters, cameras. The story had already broken. Questions flew like thrown stones. Is it true? Are you involved with her? Was the demolition delayed because of a relationship? Is this corruption? Is this manipulation? Is this scandal? Lila froze, her breath caught in her chest. She was not made for this. Not the spotlight. Not the glare that tried to turn a person into a headline, into a symbol, into a toy. To be torn apart, Telia stepped in front of her. Not shielding, but standing with a line drawn without words. His voice cut through the chaos without raising volume. No statements today, but the reporters pushed closer. Hungry, relentless, their excitement feeding on the chance to destroy. Noah moved to her side, his hand steady, his voice low. "We need to get out of here now." Elias led them through a back corridor, security escorting them, doors opening into the underground parking. Structure, the air smelled of concrete and rainwater. Runoff shadows falling in long shapes across the floor. But they were not alone. A man stepped from the darkness. Lean, sharp, smiling like a blade drawn. Slow, Sebastian Blake. His presence filled the space with quiet danger. Not loud. Not dramatic, but precise, like someone who always knew exactly where to strike. Elias stopped, every muscle in his body going still. Sebastian's gaze slid past him to Lila, then back, a slow recognition. A calculation, forming in real time. "So this is the reason your foundation cracks," he said. Voice. Smooth. Almost gentle, as if he were discussing weather. Not destruction. Curious choice. Elias' vulnerability is a rare indulgence in our world. La felt no fear, only understanding. This was the kind of man who believed people were tools or shields or trophies. Never equal. Seeley spoke carefully. "What do you want?" Sebastian smiled. Not warmth, but warning. "I want you to step aside. Let the demolition proceed. Walk away from the garden. Walk away from the girl. And keep your empire intact." The silence that followed was deep, unbreathing. A crossroads carved in soundless air. Elias did not look at Sebastian. He looked at Lila, her eyes steady, her breath controlled, her hands still open. Not clenched, not afraid. and something in him settled clear. Certain unchangeable. No, he said, soft but final. I will not step aside. Sebastian's smile widened. A predator amused. Then the storm will not be the only thing that breaks. He turned and walked. Away, footsteps echoing like a countdown. Lila exhaled slowly. Noah closed his eyes. Once steadying himself, Elias looked forward. The decision made, the consequences approaching. The storm inside the greenhouse had awakened something, and now that something was coming into the world outside. Not gentle, not safe, but unstoppable. Night fell with a heavy sky. The city lights blurred under the last trails of rain. The world outside seemed calm, but inside every quiet moment carried the weight of what was coming. Lila stood at the greenhouse entrance. The air warm, humid, alive. The plants whispering in the soft rustle of leaves. This place had always been sanctuary. Now it was a battleground. She traced her fingers along the wooden bench, the same place where she had sat during the storm, where something between her and Elias had shifted, grown roots, even if neither had named it. Footsteps approached. Slow, measured, familiar. Elias entered the greenhouse, his expression carrying something raw, a truth unhidden, and Lila knew before he spoke that something had changed. They reviewed the official redevelopment contract. He said, voice quiet. They found something I was never told. Something my father did before he left. Lila turned toward him fully. Her, breath steady, tell me. He looked at the glass ceiling, the vines, the flowers as if searching for the right place to speak from. Not power, not certainty, but honesty. These gardens were never meant to be demolished. They were protected, land registered, under a preservation trust, a trust my father signed for my mother before she died. The words hung in the warm air, alive with memory and heartbreak. Your father protected this place, Lila said softly. So what changed? Elias closed his eyes when he tried. To stop the board from seizing the land, Sebastian forced him out. Not legally, not publicly, but quietly, ruining his name, turning him into a ghost in his own company, and I grew up believing he abandoned us, abandoned me, when the truth was, he was trying to save something sacred. Lila stepped closer, her voice barely above breath. And now you are standing where he once stood. He looked at her. Then no walls, no defenses, just a man holding the weight of inheritance and love and loss all at once. Cannot let them destroy this. Not for profit, not for ego, not for revenge, not again. Lila reached out her hand, brushing his. Not pulling, just resting there. Light warm. Real, you do not have to do it alone. A sound echoed from the far end of the greenhouse. Soft. At first. Then louder footsteps, not rushed, but sure. Noah appeared from the darkness of the path, his voice low. We have proof. Now documents, signatures. The trust still stands legally. The land cannot be touched. Relief flickered. But only for a heartbeat, because another sound followed, a phone vibrating inside Elias' pocket. He answered without words. The voice on the other end was sharp, urgent, afraid. Construction crews have already arrived. They are moving in heavy equipment by sunrise. The board is ignoring. The trust, Sebastian, is accelerating everything. Lila felt the ground shift beneath everything they had built. This was no longer a strategy. This was a final attempt at erasure. Elias met her eyes not with fear, but with resolve. We confront them publicly, together at the site before they can break ground. Noah nodded, once ready. Steady. Lila inhaled the greenhouse surrounding her with the breath of living things. A storm had begun this, but what came next would not be weather. It would be choice. It would be truth. It would be war without violence, power against power, root against steel. And for the first time, they were no longer reacting to the storm. They were walking into it. Dawn came, gray and heavy clouds hanging low, as if the sky itself knew what was waiting below. The earth was still wet from the storm. Mud soft beneath boots and tires, the air sharp with the smell of rain and metal. Lila. Noah and Elias arrived at the gardens. Just as the heavy machines were rolling and massive steel arms raised like monsters waking from sleep, workers moving with practiced urgency, orders shouted, plans already set in motion. Sebastian stood near the center of the site, hands in his pockets, coat untouched by wind. A man who believed the world would bend, simply because he wished it to. He turned when he saw them. A smile forming slow and sharp. "You came to watch history be rewritten," he said. But it was not a question. Elias stepped forward. No hesitation. Now. No waver. Not the man the board once controlled. Not the man the city thought they knew, but the man his father had tried to teach him to be there. Will be no demolition. These gardens are protected under a legal trust signed and sealed. Binding. You have no authority. Here Sebastian's smile did not fade. He spoke softly, almost gently. I have the board. I have the contractors. I have the permits. And I have the public narrative. What do you have? Elias Lila stepped to his side, her voice steady. We have the truth. Noah lifted the folder in his hands. The original trust contract, the legal protection that had been buried, ignored, almost erased, and the investigative report proving Sebastian's interference in Elias' father's removal from power workers paused. Uncertainty cracking through their practiced efficiency. Whispers spread like wind through grass. Sebastian's confident posture shifted just a fraction. A thread pulled from the center of the tapestry he believed was unbreakable. This is hearsay, he said, voice sharp now. Hard, but no one moved to follow his orders, because Lila had already stepped onto the nearest piece of equipment. Hands raised. Voice lifted, so it reached every worker, every photographer, every passerby who had begun to gather at the edges of the fence. These gardens are more than land. They hold memories, ecosystems, history, love, grief, roots that belong to everyone, not just the people who can afford to buy them. Every word moved through the air like seeds carried by the wind, landing, taking hold, growing. Noah joined her, holding the documents, high proof, visible, undeniable. Workers lowered their tools. Machines were shut down one by one. The noise faded until the only sound was wind moving through leaves, alive, undefeated. Sebastian realized too late that power is not held by force, but by what people choose to believe, and they were no longer believing him. Elias looked at him for the last time. No victory in his expression, only clarity. My father did not fail. You did. Sebastian stepped back. Not dramatic, not defeated, just small for the first time. Security escorted him away, quiet, swift. The storm of his control finally broken. Silence settled, not empty, not tense, peaceful. Erned Lila turned to Elias, the greenhouse behind them, the sunrise finally breaking through clouds, gold light touching his face, softening everything that once seemed sharp. You chose it, she said. Not the board, not the company, not the legacy. You chose what mattered. Delius stepped closer, slow, intentional, his voice low, but sure. I chose you. I chose the life that lives. Not the world that destroys. Lila felt the breath leave her chest, not from shock, but from recognition. The kind of recognition that feels like coming home. Lifted her hands in his, no urgency, no hesitation, just the quiet certainty of roots growing deeper. And in the gardens they saved under the light of a new morning, with no audience, no spotlight, no noise. He kissed her, not like a storm, not like a fire, but like soil, like roots, like something that would last. The greenhouse later became a sanctuary for the city, a protected reserve, a place where the rare flowers bloomed, where children learned the names of living things, where history remained alive. And sometimes when rain struck the glass roof, people swore they could feel the warmth of a storm that had changed everything. A storm that did not destroy but revealed what was worth protecting and what was worth loving forever.